it's such a privilege to catch up with Mr. Akash Goyle, who's the country manager and managing director at Luxottica India. Thank you so much, Akash, for joining us.
Oh, good morning, Vinod, and thanks a lot for having me. Really, it's a pleasure always to interact with.
So, Akash, I was just wondering, you, with your current focus, in eyewear as the country manager for Luxottica, how do you see the prospects for this sector, especially in the context of what's happening with this pandemic in India, and maybe for the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, what's your view on what may happen to this sector?
Okay, so Vinod, let me take you back a little, in a sense that if you were to look at the past decade, the eyewear industry per se, whether it is optical services or whether it is frames and glasses, the industry has grown at a fantastic pace, right? And the basic reasons driving those growth, whether it is rising awareness, rising access to vision care, rising aspirations of the Indian consumer, that has not changed because of the pandemic, right? So I think we are looking at it in the short term, and we are overestimating the impact of the pandemic in the short term. We need to look at it more in the medium to a long-term perspective. And to answer your question, in the next 3 to 5 years, I really do feel that the industry will come back to its same rate of growth. We have been growing at a rate which is faster than the GDP, and that should stay for sure. Some things that we need to be careful about, in a sense that while I'm not saying that this pandemic will not have any impact at all. There will be some areas which we need to watch out for, specifically related to the consumer behavior per se, the evolution in the retail, consolidation of the retail. So those are things that we need to watch out for. But overall, I would say that the health of the industry is quite robust. And if you pardon my pun, I would say the industry's future is clear and sunny.
Wow. Thanks for that very positive, optimistic view. I just wanted to probably ask you a little bit of a follow-up question on what you said at a panel discussion recently. You had mentioned that the fundamentals of the sector are good, but one of the things we got to work a bit more on is our competitiveness. And I was just wondering what you meant and whether you could probably throw in a few hints on what your thoughts on that would be.
Okay. So, Vinod, I had mentioned this in the context of India being an optical hub per se, and why can't India become an optical hub? And we have some experience in terms of manufacturing in India. We have had a plant here for the last 30 years. We have been manufacturing Ray-Ban and a little bit of Vogue frames over here. And if I look at it in terms of the cost alone, we are quite competitive, right? So on a standalone basis, if I was to compare the cost at which we manufacture in India versus anywhere else in the world, we are quite competitive. That's not the issue. The competitiveness that I spoke about is more in terms of the indirect costs that you get. Right? Let me give you an example. As say a company who would want to invest a few $1 million here in India in setting up a manufacturing unit or upgrading my manufacturing unit, what I would expect as a manufacturer is some kind of a policy certainty. That is something that still is missing, right? There were also issues related to taxation, though I must say that ever since GST has come in, at least that part of it to quite an extent has been taken care of. Then there are other issues which are related to labor, land acquisition. So all these indirect costs, they kind of add up. So if we were to work together in terms of making India an easier place to kind of manufacture in, I would say that our competitiveness would be at par, if not better than anywhere else in the world. Cost-wise, we are already there.
Thank you, Akash. Now, I know that you, as a company, you do quite a bit in the non-profit aspect in terms of making sure people who live in rural parts and underprivileged get access to a pair of spectacles. So I was just wondering, what can industry do more to help in this space? I mean, my understanding is there are tens and tens of millions of people, rural Indians, who need access to a pair of glasses but still don't have access to it?
Oh, very good question, Vinod. And this is something which is very close to my heart too. When I look at numbers, they are quite mind-boggling in a sense that there is some estimate which says there are 600 million people in India with uncorrected refractive error. And it's not that it's going to take a lot of money to do it, right? Money alone is not the issue. It's also about providing access to vision care. So a couple of things on which are required and what the industry can help with, right? One, of course, is creation of a sustainable access point. So we need a lot of sustainable access points for the consumers. We need to bridge the affordability gap. There are some people who can afford it. There are some people who still can't afford it. So bridging that affordability gap, that's the other area that we need to work on. Third is in terms of driving awareness around vision care. That's also something which is extremely important. A lot of people take it for granted, specifically the elderly. I have been a part of a lot of vision care camps, and I'll give you an example of one vision care camp where this lady, she used to do needlework for a living. And just because of her presbyopia condition, that she could not put head inside a needle, right? She had kind of given up on life and she was begging on the streets. And for her, it was, ye to Bhagwan ki deen hai. So that awareness that it just requires a pair of reader and you are and you get your vision back. I think that's another area. Last but not the least, there is also acceptability around spectacles, which we have seen as a road. It used to be a roadblock some time back. This is one area that we have worked on in particular in driving that cool quotient around spectacles. That's an area that we have kind of worked on also. But other than that, for the industry per se, and I'm not saying only our optical industry, I'm meaning industry in general here, a lot of them have their CSR budgets, and if they are used in the right way, we really can make a significant impact, not only in India, but globally, in terms of increasing productivity for people who are not blessed with the right 6x6 vision. So to summarize this, I think the industry can come in terms of creation of sustainable access points for vision care. The second is bridging the affordability gap, right? So subsidizing. So for example, a lot of things that we do, our model simply is that we would help in setting up the primary vision care center. So the capex cost related to the vision care center is something that we would fund. We would fund the vision care center in terms of its OPEX for the first year. And thereafter, we expect the vision care center to kind of start churning money on its own, right? Not for profit, but start churning money on our own. So these are the, this is just an example of what we do. We've also been working a lot with school children in particular, because we feel that a student who gets access to vision care right in the beginning, it makes a difference in terms of the quality of life that the child has when the child grows up, right? So that's the other area that we've been working, and I feel the industry can play a very important role there too.
And my very last question is a bit more of a personal question, Akash. So Akash, you worked in several sectors in a leadership role, and right now you're in a leadership role in this eye care sector. So I was just wondering, I mean, what's the difference personally for you to work in this sector compared to every other role you had?
You are asking me to go back a long way, Vinod. I've been a part of the eye care sector now for the past 12 years, right? So I'm very much a part of this now. Yeah, but yeah, there are differences in a sense that prior to this, I was with garments. Prior to that, I started my career with FMCG, right? The primary difference between the sector that I'd worked in earlier and the sector now is the shopping experience in vision care is more personalized and it is more immersive for the consumer. If I was to compare with FMCG, for example, it's a very transactional kind of a shopping experience. You go to a shop, you pick up an item and you pay for it and you walk out. Right? That's not the case in our sector. Here, It's a very immersive and an engaging experience. The optician plays a very important role and gives a very important service to the consumer, right? And also the way the industry has evolved over the last 10 years, right, has been very, very encouraging. When I joined this industry about 10, 12 years ago, it was still very, let me say, the products were looked at, or the service was looked at as a commodity. I think that has changed now. Brands have started playing a lot more important role in this. People have started differentiating between services that they get from one optical store to the other, right? So, and that's also resulted in a lot of good things for the end consumer. If you look at our retail stores today, they are the same, if not better than any of the retail stores anywhere in the world, specifically in terms of services that they provide.
Well, thank you so much, Akash, for sharing your thoughts on a range of things, right, from your personal journey to the eye care sector. Thank you so much for joining in this conversation.
Thank you, Vinod. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And thanks for having me here. Have a good day.